I'll be closing this webinar series. And yeah, sharing my insights about my story and the story of MindWorks. So this is what will be going on. And here is the QR code. So please, if you scan the QR code, you'll get to slido.com. And there, please use the code MX1611 to access the Q&A session, and there is a question actually waiting for you. So why did you join today? So what are you trying to learn here? What is it that you would like to know from Melina? So please let us know so that we're able to maybe adjust my questions and to give you the value that you want to get from this webinar. So, Melina, we're slowly getting there. I would say let's give it another 1 or 2 minutes. Then I have plenty of questions that I want to ask you about your journey, even though I know a little bit about it, because we've known each other for a couple of years now. We've discussed many things. I think we think alike when it comes to business, and especially behavioral consulting. There are many things that annoy us about the BE field, but I think even more that we like, right?
Yeah, sure. I'm intrigued for the conversation. It's going to be fun. I know you're saying that I am never grumpy and I've never been annoyed, so that'll be.
Okay, so let's see if we have any results. So Jana, if you could give us the results here. Okay, so how does this look? I'm interested in the field of BE, and I'm trying to understand this field more in depth. Get insights about starting a business as behavioral science consultant. Student interested in the field. Perfect. And let me try to maneuver this. Okay, I can even scroll inside the slide. I want to become a BE consultant. Great. I'm looking for a career move to BE. I work in marketing now to be inspired. Well, I very much hope that this is exactly what you will learn now. So, let me please present our guest today. It's Melina Palmer. Melina has been in the field for a while now, and she's one of the people who's, I would say, the best known as the BE evangelist through your podcast and through your books. So you're the author of 2 books. They're already out, and the 3rd one is on the way. It should be out, if I'm not mistaken, on the 9th of January. Is that right?
That's right. We never know how international publication works, but that's the official date.
But the first 2 are definitely out. So what your customer wants and can't tell you, what your employees need and can't tell you. Melina is behind the podcast with more than a million downloads by now, and she's also running a BE consultancy. And about your journey, that's what we'll talk about today. So Melina, thank you so much for being here with us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
And guys, so for those of you who don't know me and who don't know MindWorks, we are I founded the company 8 years ago, and I'll share my story in January. But along the way, we've become the world leader in consumer psychology training programs, and as consultants, we advise clients across Europe on sales strategies, persuasive communication, and new product design. And these are some of the clients that we have worked with, mainly in the banking, insurance, and telco sectors. So this is a little bit about myself. And this is the agenda for today. So first, it will be about Melina's story, how you came to love behavioral economics and how you got in the field. Then we have two main parts. The first one is about what makes, according to Melina, a good behavioral economics consultant. The second part is how to successfully go independent for those who are interested in actually starting your careers as independent consultants. And then there will be a couple of things. So I want to tell you a couple of words about a new program that we started just a couple of days ago. Licensed, we're looking for licensed MindWorks licensed partners across the globe. And then one of you will win an online masterclass that we created a couple of years ago together with Dan Ariely, Rory Sutherland, and Sam Tatum. So for those of you who are here, one of you will get it for free. So this is my colleague Jana, who will vote for the person who wins, and then we'll open it for Q&A at the end. So we'll reserve some 15 minutes for Q&A. But I guess this is it. So Melina, what is your story? What is your background, and how did you get into the field of behavioral economics?
Yeah, so my undergrad is in marketing, and I always, kind of look back to, there was one moment while there was a class that had one, paragraph, basically, maybe one section of a book that just talked a little bit about buying psychology and why people did the things that they did. And I thought it was just the most amazing and fascinating thing that I had ever found. And I had never really thought about additional education. I'm a, first generation college graduate for my family, and like master's degrees and things like that weren't really on my radar. But when I saw this, I had, said, oh, I'm going to go back. I'm going to get a master's in this. This is going to be so cool, right? I was really excited. And I spent the better part of 10 years calling universities around the country here in the US and asking them about this type of program. And they all said that it wasn't a thing. It didn't exist. I could make my own program if I wanted to, but wasn't a thing for them. And was a little discouraged, but kind of put it on a shelf and went in to be working in industry. So similarly, as you said, I ended up working in a financial institution after working at an ad agency, and actually starting a different consulting company before then, working inside of a financial institution for 6 years. While I was there, I was part of a program. It's like a fellowship for innovation, and they brought in some people from the Center for Advanced Hindsight, which, for those of you who don't know, is the behavioral economics wing at Duke University. And they were talking about the work and the research they were doing, and I realized that this was the thing I had been looking for a decade. And so I made them talk to me, I'm sure, for much longer than they wanted to, as I pestered them with questions. And they let me know it was called behavioral economics. And I found myself a master's program and jumped right in. And so I knew I was at least somewhat early because I had spent 10 years looking for a program, especially on that applied side, though, was like really early, because there wasn't a lot happening in applied behavioral science or behavioral economics at that time. And so ended up, I was doing consulting, just thought I was going to be doing just like basic marketing type consulting while I was getting my degree. And then that evolved into being really more behavioral focused in the podcast. And I'll stop there because I'm sure there are questions about that.
And Melina, when was this?
So I met the folks from Duke in either 2015, I think. And I started, I ended up finding my master's program that I started like around the end of 2016 with that.
Mm-hmm.
So
around eight years now. When did you start calling yourself a behavioral economics expert or buying psychology expert? Because you said that it started first as a kind of marketing consultancy with some aspects of maybe buyer psychology, but
Yeah.
when did you get the confidence to actually call yourself an expert on buying behavior?
I don't know that I even have ever actually said that. So that's even with 3 books and the said it in that way. What I say is that I'm an applied behavioral economist, and
Mhm.
so I started the podcast. So the Brainy Business podcast started in July of 2018. It was about 6 months before I finished my master's program. And so I know for there's the question, and that confidence of starting it early or whatever. It's funny to what it's grown into now. I did not even have like I thought it would be this big, maybe, right? I can't even see how big that is. I did not have high aspirations. I didn't even think about a global aspect of it. I don't know why, but I just was meeting with and doing, I had been doing work more with small businesses and with some financial institutions and people that I, knew in that way. And, the thought was the reason I started the show was because really no one knew what behavioral economics was. For everybody that's watching now and is like, nobody even knows what this is. What do I do? Like, trust me, you can do that. You have so many more people now that know about the field. But going in and saying to people like, hey, I know you were thinking you wanted marketing or something, but there's this other thing. It's called behavioral economics, and it's really important. And this is how it works. And you should hire a consultant to help you with it. And that should be me. Is a really rough sale, right? That's not the goal. That'd be really hard. And so I got a nudge from someone with a successful podcast to start one and figured it was just going to be like a warm lead generator, for people on the one side. If I say, oh, I do this thing in behavioral economics, they say, what is that? I can say, oh, I've got a podcast about it. And you can learn a little bit more. And then for people that find the podcast first, and then they would come to me and want to be doing some work, they have that background and know what it even is. So I'm not having to have such a heavy lift and long sales cycle. So that was the thought behind it. And so as far as I would say a lot of confidence probably came. So not even, we're maybe 20 episodes in, and I had someone who is now a dear friend named Jeff Poole from the Human Behavior Lab at Texas A&M University reaching out. And he had actually done a review of the podcast. I did a shout out on the show. We end up getting connected and find out he's helping, program manager at the Human Behavior Lab. And they were saying they have all their doctoral students listen to the podcast to help them understand and have a foundation in behavioral economics and how it works. Because it was like the best resource they were able to find on the field, which was pretty cool, right? Like
Wow,
and
that's an ego boost.
yeah. And like I said, I had, 24 episodes, not even, that were out at that time. And so I ended up going and taking a tour of the lab, getting to meet Dr. Palmer. That has then turned in over time, co-creating this certificate in applied behavioral economics, which I still teach for. And I think knowing that as people are reaching out, and it's people that are teaching economics in universities, people with doctorates, people getting doctorates are listening to the show and finding value in the content that's being created, has helped to get over those thoughts of like, I don't know what I'm talking about, imposter syndrome that we all still have no matter what. So.
Yeah, right. I think many of the people listening and watching now might be in the position where they're really fascinated by the field. They would like to make their living in the field, doing something, but they might still feel like they don't know enough.
Mm-hmm.
And my question is, how much do you have to know in order to actually go out there? I'm not even talking about being an independent consultant, but just maybe applying for a job. So how much should you know, and what should you know? in order to go to be able to enter the field?
Yeah, it's a really interesting Dunning-Kruger effect problem, right? Because you get some people on the one side where it's like, I read Nudge, I am now a behavioral economist, right? I'm just like, no, that's not how that works. And then, you also get, once you realize then how much there is, fall off of, that peak of Mount Stupid, as they say, and realize all that you don't know and start to feel like you're never going to have enough confidence to speak about it again because there's so much that you could have to figure out. So there really is a sweet spot in there of knowing that just anybody who is here, I am willing to bet, knows more than the vast majority of people that are out there. And if you're looking to be, it really depends on what side of the field you want to be on. So there are, even in the applied side, there are like people that are doing the research, and there are agencies and consultants that are doing really in-depth research in various areas for their clients, and even working inside of a company where you're needing to do extreme types of research. And so getting a PhD, at least a master's, is required for those types of roles. And so, that's something to keep in mind. If you want to be really, really doing research and working inside of a lab, even on an applied side, that's something to keep in mind. And on the consulting side of it, where you're just doing more, like I do some research with clients, but the bulk is I do strategic consulting, and I'm giving advice based on a background I have in the work that I've done in industry before, working in behavioral science and then beyond. And so I think you have to have been reading continuously on different items and facets and developing your own thoughts, I would say, for at least a year, before you should feel like you're in a good enough spot to know, like, enough. Because there's a layer of, oh, I've heard of those things, and then there's a layer of being able to know what it is versus, like, I've heard Dunning-Kruger effect, but I don't necessarily know. And you can't expect, it's not that everybody's going to know all the hundreds of things off the top, right? But where you can see when you're having a conversation with a client and they're talking about something, and you're able to think, oh, I wonder how anchoring might apply in this scenario. I know they're talking about this, but I think that time discounting is maybe a factor here. Like, you need to be able to be seeing under the surface. And if you're going to be the expert where they definitely don't know, there's a layer of thoughtfulness that you need to have. And so I'm guessing this will be a question that'll come up, but I think the podcast is really the best thing that I could have possibly done, because being forced to develop my thoughts around things every single week and do a ton of research and write something out that then became a script on, for an hour-long episode on loss aversion and whatever else, made it to where I now know that really well to be able to have conversations. And I still do research on things, but anyway, yeah.
Yeah, we also do research, in every single project. It's like never, you can never say that you know everything to be able to, come up with the best solution. But I think you're touching on a very, very interesting point here, because the reason behind this webinar series was the fact that many people were turning to me and asking me these kind of questions. And
yeah, same.
The one mistake that I see a lot is that people keep learning and learning and learning and learning, reading all they can, doing all kind of courses, reading through research papers, but they never get to this second point that you're saying, which I think much more important.
Yep.
Than knowing, the 100th bias. I think being able to connect the dots and having, and thinking about how to apply all this in the real life, in practice, in business.
Yeah.
Because and this is the second part, this is the kind of the business part of it. But I think, at least for us, it's the clients, they don't really care if you've used loss aversion or you've used social proof or you've used anchoring. They care about the results.
Yeah.
And many people, and that's the second mistake I very often see, is that people kind of think of behavioral economics and all the biases as kind of the end goal, but it's just a means to an end. So
Right.
it's just one tool in the toolbox. And my question is, do you feel like your background in marketing was a big help here?
Yes. Yeah. A million gajillion percent. Yes. And like you were saying, I think it's easy to get too absorbed and focused on the behavioral side and feeling like this is where you have to be ready to compete for all the other behavioral economists, behavioral scientists, whatever, that are vying for whatever this thing is. And on the academic side, yes, like absolutely understanding those in and out and up and down is really necessary. On the applied side of it, if you don't understand how businesses work, what their problems are, what their goals are, the speed at which they work, understanding interpersonal communication and how they're able to get budget or not, and what they need on projects, and the types of questions that they're interested in, and all those sorts of things. And again, not that you have to know absolutely everything before you jump in, but if you don't have any awareness of that, it's so hard, because how do you even know what to pitch to somebody, right? If you don't know the types of projects they're working on, if you don't know the problems they have, if you don't know what they're trying to get to, what their goals are, like you need that
It is more
foundation.
difficult. It is definitely more difficult. And I'm speaking from experience, because when I started Mindworks, I had zero experience in business, and it was actually tough. So for all of you guys who have marketing background and are dreaming of actually making the jump from marketing to BE, don't think about it as a jump.
Right.
Just basically you're adding another kind of tool to your toolbox,
Yeah.
and you're basically becoming a more effective kind of business consultant, I would say.
Yeah.
And your marketing background is a tremendous help and advantage.
Right. I think it's important to note too that it's not that it's a field just for marketers by any means. So HR is a great place to be thinking about human behavior. Clearly, I know that I've been seeing and connecting with people that are layering in anthropology with cybersecurity and technology. Of course, machine learning and behavioral science are having a lot of intersection now. Nonprofits are getting interested in this. Government, it has a lot of areas with nudging, things like architecture and design, right? Every field, there's a place for you, which is really cool. So don't feel like you are stuck with, like, just because you're seeing a lot of marketers that are also doing behavioral stuff, and if you don't have an interest in it, don't feel like you have to go there. We just talk the most, maybe. You just see us more often in some of these spots, but it's definitely not the only thing. And just because whatever industry you're interested in, whatever sector, whatever type of role, even if it doesn't exist yet, what's really cool is because the field is building so much, you can really like name and claim the thing that's not there yet. It might take a while to get there, but what I always tell people is look at, the types of companies you want to work with or for. And if you were to say, what would that even look like in that dream role, and what steps might you need to take to get there, then you can just build that plan. And it, I think, has a higher likelihood of coming to fruition in this industry and at this time, because people are just starting to realize that those snowballs are coming for sure. And they're going to be looking. And if you've been visible and you've been talking about what can be in that field, you've got a good chance of creating that role, whatever it happens to be.
And Melina, what are your thoughts on, because you've just named a couple of kind of sub-domains within the B field, do you think you can be a good consultant in several of those domains? So having a couple of projects in say aimed at increasing sales, then a couple of projects in HR, and then something for the government, or should you focus?
Yes. I think both can be true. If you are wanting to dabble a little bit more, you need a bigger team likely to be able to make that happen, and or a different, it just depends on the depth at which you do work. So like I work for all types of companies. I have clients that are entrepreneurs. Have worked with Mars and Maker's Mark and whatever. And so there are different types of companies that you can be doing work for. I obviously have a book that's on internal communication, another one on the customer facing side. So I see how these can come together. But again, I'm typically not doing the deep research type of projects.
Mhm.
And so I'm helping to like inspire ideas, answer questions, train teams to be able to implement this in the way that they would need it in their organization, and not doing so much of the work. That's what my organization is built around. And so it can transcend over multiple industries. I think with any of it, you want to start with one thing that you can get good at and have a couple of examples for, to be able to show, hey, people like you pick a company like me and to come in and do this work. And so if you can find something you're passionate about, whether it's HR, marketing, or anything else, and you can get a couple of ideas of, this is what we do, this is why we do it, this is the problem most people in HR have, and so we solve with this type of project, just for people to be able to even understand what you do is a really big hurdle in getting people to then trust and want to buy in. And the great thing is, when you can niche down on that thing, whatever it happens to be, it makes it easier for people to find you. It's easier for you to talk about. It's easier to become that habit for you about, this is, the way it works. And it's just easier for you to sell and for other people to sell you, and you can build confidence faster. And then when someone says, hey, I know we did this, but this other department in the company also needs help, but the team, so you can like stretch a little bit. Right. Or, someone else says, okay, I saw this project you did, and, we're over here, but I'm looking to layer. Can we do that? Right. And you can create, build out those boundaries, but trying to get good at something at the beginning is going to be your easiest path, I would say.
You're making a couple of interesting points, and very briefly, I'll share my experience. And when we started as MindWorks, we didn't have a focus. And that was for two reasons. Because first, I thought I could be good at everything. Because, well, at the end of the day, it's just, the same psychology, just applied elsewhere in different domains. But then I learned it's not really that. And we actually saw, when we focused and we chose our specific fields and what we really want to be good at, we saw really good growth, and it helped us a lot. But this initial kind of stage of trying different things was very important, because we got to understand what we liked and what we were good at. So exploring is, I think really good. But as you're saying, you really want to be good at something. So maybe choosing something at the beginning is a really good strategy. Let me wrap up this first part, which was, well, a little bit more about how to be a could be a consultant, and now we're going to switch to how to actually become an independent consultant. So just to wrap it up, maybe you can help me, Melina. So let's come up with, say, 5 key thoughts here, and let me start. So basically, PE is another tool in your toolbox, and if you have some skills, just add this and build on what you already know. So what would be your next thought?
I think is to develop your own unique thoughts and perspectives on how you're putting those two things together, whatever they happen to be, and forcing yourself to put those ideas, onto paper or something else where you can be sharing them, I think is a really key aspect.
Awesome. So talking about it and teaching it is great because it helps. First of all, it helps you to align your thoughts. Yeah, please go ahead. Do you have another one?
Well, I was saying with that, it's it's one thing to say, oh well, Melina said this, like Matej says this, Kahneman says this, Ariely says this, and then it is like I have taken that and say what, right? What's the thing that you're adding that is interesting perspective is when you're looking into doing some version of consulting, you want to have that depth of how you take it a little bit further and into this area of application, right?
And one last thing from me is go from thinking to doing. And as fast as possible, try to get to some small applications. Don't try to get paid for it. Just try to go out there and apply it. I guess that links nicely with your previous thought. That's around not thinking, but connecting to the practice, the practical side. Okay, Melina. So this was the first part, and now what I'm really interested in: who was your first client? What was your first paid project?
It's funny because so I had been doing freelance for quite some time, and then started doing work. So along the lines of what you're talking about here, what you were just saying is my first year as full-time consulting, I did what I called my year of yes. So I was in my master's program, and I had decided it was just going to be everything and anything that came around that I might be able to do, I was going to do. I'm taking other people's scraps. I am branching out and doing stuff that I may not necessarily be super jazzed about. I wasn't worried about the rates or anything else. It was just getting a feel for things and building out some of those relationships. It helped me to see some things I did want to do and a lot of things I did not want to do. And so, in the process of looking through everything there to then say, like, when I really, so I was incorporating behavioral stuff all along the way. I have an example from a financial institution that I was doing some work for, different than where I had been while I was in industry, that I use in my book. That they had a campaign for a new checking account they were all excited about that they were going to do, that said their billboards were all going to say earn up to 1.26% APY for up to $25,000 in balances. That was like the headline. And they had me in to help just to say, this is good, right? Like, help us to make it look pretty. And I got them to do a reframe on that not so awesome headline to say, did your checking account pay you $315 last year? Which you're able to say no, and then spark interest. They ended up seeing a 60% growth month over month in account openings, which is really not common. And so I would say that is one of the first ones. And it was definitely not something that I was hired on as like behavioral economist Melina is going to whatever, right? No, actually from that same like innovation fellowship I was in, another person who ran a marketing department that had become a friend of mine that was at a different financial institution that was hiring me to help with like emails and like writing some stuff and doing, extra projects and things. And I was able to layer in that expertise to show them the value of it. So we'll say that was the first like step that was really, I think, officially into that. Mhm.
And so, if I understand correctly, this was a project where you could showcase an actual increase. So kind of a numerical value that you brought, because I have in mind one very specific tiny little project we did for pro bono, but there were results, measurable
Yeah.
results. And that was like a turning point in our communication because we were able to show, oh, we managed to get a 56% increase in a click-through rate on whatever, using this and that principle. And that
Yep.
was like, wow, I mean, this thing really works.
For sure. Yeah, that thing I think is something that people miss a lot when they're just starting out, is not thinking about shareable results. And if you're probably going to feel inclined to discount on your rate and things like that. I highly recommend this new book coming out called The Truth About Pricing that can help you with this. But if you are going to do that sort of thing up front, like I said, you're just going to be accepting things, finding that opportunity to get people to agree to be a case study up front, get them agree to be doing results and having something that you'll be able to publish in a way that they'll be able to be like on board with it. If things are, if they don't turn out, you don't have to. But getting them to agree to that for a discounted rate and getting that like in writing up front so that you can then ensure that they're going to be tracking properly, that you can show the results. You did a control group, you are able to know what happened, is so important for that social proof aspect of getting other people to trust and see what the value is that you provide. And, it's a really good opportunity at any point, but especially when you're starting out and you just want to prove something. And so even the stuff where it's like, feels like it's not as useful. I know I've had people over the years where it's like, well, my parents own a restaurant or my sister is a whatever and my best friend has this, but like, and I have ideas, but I don't even know what to do. And they say, or I've done things for free but like no one will believe or no one will want to hear about that. Like if you have tangible results that you're able to show that you went from this to this and this is what you did, nobody knows or cares that you didn't get paid for it. People don't ask. Sorry. So
no, absolutely. This is it. I mean, if you can show something that's trustworthy because there are numbers, and you might be talking about that in your next book also, the power of concrete numbers and so on and so on. I mean, this is tremendously helpful. Melina, what were maybe the three biggest challenges when you were starting out? What were you missing? What was there that you didn't have or didn't know that was holding you back?
I would say, fair or otherwise, the lack of awareness early on was something that I think was at least somewhat holding back of getting people to move forward. On that same line, my lack of realizing what could be, like I said, when I started the podcast, I didn't even think about a global audience. I wasn't thinking about, I had thought like, oh, be doing a lot of this work enough. And then eventually I might be cool enough to go talk to some corporate clients. I lucked out in a way that people started reaching out to me from large companies without me having to try to pitch and find or anything. And I didn't even realize I was speaking to those people, from early on. And so I think my own mental barriers, just like so many others, was probably something that was holding me back. And as a small entity, the lack of team something that is always both. I think it's really helpful, and I've intentionally kept my company small, but it can, keep me from being able to do all the things that I would love to do. So I have to be really selective, and you don't always pick the right things, but yeah.
And because many people are afraid that they don't have the credibility, and when they go into a sales pitch or a business meeting, which is actually a very valid concern. And I felt it when I was just starting out.
Hmm.
I didn't have the credibility. So did you get your credibility through the podcast, or how did you get yours?
Yeah, I would say it was the podcast is and again, well, not even again. I want to be clear. I am not recommending that everyone starts a podcast. They are a lot of work. They take a ton of time, especially from the early days of the show. I was spending 8 to 10 hours per episode and not doing my own editing. And that doesn't include all the advertising, like promoting and talking about it. And I still spend probably, 5, 6 hours per episode even when they're interviews, right? Like it is a lot of time to do right. But picking something that you do that you're going to be consistent about, that's developing your voice, that people can start to rely on, that they then want to be tuning in, whether that's a LinkedIn newsletter or thoughts on Twitter or whatever. But you can just be showing up enough. When I started the podcast, I made a commitment. I said, I'm going to do it every single week without fail for a full year before I decide if it's working or not. And if after a year it's not doing much, then I can move on to something else. But I have to commit to the thing and be consistent and put everything I got into it for a full year before I can evaluate if it worked or not. And that's like, you never miss an episode. Always send that, newsletter promoting it and whatever. And so I think that dedication to a thing is the most important thing, and a big mistake I see for any type of consulting, and especially in that independent space. There's the allure to do everything and be everywhere, and you can't. You just can't. So picking your thing and going all in on it is the best advice I think I can give. And that then helps to build credibility. And as you're asking people to give their feedback and share with thoughts with you, it helps to round that all out and build that confidence too.
And because what you're saying, in other words, is that you have to get your name out there and get people to see it, maybe to be able to say, well, as I mentioned in a podcast episode or in this article, because this was exactly what helped me at the beginning. I reached out to all kind of magazines and newspapers, and I proposed to write articles for free, of course. And they were actually super happy to get my articles because, well, it saves them time, and they were actually quite interesting, an interesting topic, and that gave me a lot of credibility. So the advice is definitely don't be afraid to reach out and to try to get your name out there and to share your thoughts, because that in turn will give you a lot of credibility. Melina, my last question here. What are the 2 or 3 most effective lead gen activities? So to get your, leads, clients, whatever you say. I guess one of them is definitely your podcast. So let's put that aside. What else is there?
Yeah, after the podcast, would say is social media engagement, of which the main area of focus for me is LinkedIn. And so connecting with people, sharing, commenting, being visible, not just like liking things, but connecting, sharing other people's content, tagging and whatnot is a really big thing that I do across LinkedIn. And so many people I've gotten to know over time have come from there. I would say then probably the next piece, which is, built off of the other two for sure. But the speaking that I do is something that, and I had been doing speaking before I started really heavily in the behavioral side of stuff. But speaking engagements get podcast listeners that bring people in. Speaking engagements lead to consulting. Speaking leads to other stuff. So I would say that is a big aspect as well.
Mm-hmm. And my very last question, what are the main revenue streams for you? I mean, you're talking about consulting, of course, but is there anything else? I guess speaking also?
Yeah, speaking is top really at this point. And then, like you said, consulting and, even the teaching that I'm doing, it would be in there, as well in that.
Do
And,
you do any company training?
I do. Yeah. I guess I loop that into speaking. So yeah, I would say so in that way, yeah, speaking, training, consulting, like that's it. That's a big bulk of where that comes from. And we're working on some more of the like DIY stuff that doesn't take up my time every time. So we're working on new courses and things that people can just buy and use, and that's like books and things like that too go in that category. So yeah.
All right. Well, Melina, thank you so much for this part. And what's ahead of us now are, of course, a Q&A session that everybody's looking forward to. But before that, let me just share this Wheel of Fortune. And here we have all the names of people who have registered for the webinar. And now I'm gonna spin the wheel and we'll get a winner. But the winner must be here now live in the session. So if your name comes up, please unmute or write in chat that you are here, and then we will reach out and we'll give you access to this masterclass. So let's spin the wheel. Is michellepen81gmail.com. Michelle,
I see
here.
There was a like emoji sort of celebration coming up there. That feels like that's Michelle.
Yeah, Michelle, you're there. Okay, so Michelle will be reaching out and we'll share your login details to the course. Perfect. So this is it. And before we go on to the Q&A session, let me just tell you one more thing. And as I promised at the beginning, we just launched this MindWorks licensed partnerships. And what this is actually about, just go to this link or to the QR code. We were getting so many companies reaching to us and wanting us to train them in consumer psychology and behavior economics. And we simply were not able to satisfy them all. So we decided to open this licensed partner program where we will train you guys to deliver one of our training programs. And basically we will become part of this MindWorks community where you can get all the insights you need, all the help you need. So if this sounds like something that might help you out as you're starting out your career in behavioral economics, just go to this link and have a look. Maybe this is really something that you've been looking for and waiting for. So that's it. And Melina, this is now back to you, and we are now going back to Slido. So
so I was scanning through some of those while you were talking about the licensing program, and so I think I can answer at least one to get started on this if you want to then look for the next one, so we can be thoughtful to time, if that's okay.
Okay.
So there was a question
here.
Yeah, there was one in here that was asking about how long does it take to publish a book from finishing the writing to actually buying a book on Amazon. So there are a couple of things. I get asked about book writing stuff a lot, and there are multiple paths to go. So if you were going to do self-published book, I mean, you can publish it and it's available tomorrow, like if there's something going on, maybe today even, right? So self-publishing you can have available immediately, no issues with that. If you are working with a publisher, so if you're doing a traditional publisher, your HarperCollins, Simon Schuster, things like that, Penguin, you need an agent that has to buy in on you. That agent then has to pitch you to the company that's going to pick you up as the publisher, and it's a whole thing, and that takes extra time. And it's about a year, maybe 18 months, depending on that. For my books, I've worked with a hybrid publisher called Mango, and it's pretty well been almost exactly a year from like pitch to publish for mine. And that's included, I've then been writing the book, in that process, and that for all three. There's a lot of steps that go into those. But you have to get them to accept you first, right? You have to pitch to get picked up, and then it's a year to get it finished, written, assuming you can write the book in 3-4 months. So there's
Great.
that.
Great. Well, so that's for those who are considering writing a book, which I am also doing right now. So apart from a master's, where would you suggest to start off?
Yeah. So I do recommend the certificate in applied behavioral economics at Texas A&M University. And I think that's, we purposely created that for people who are busy and working and want to enhance their skills, and not have to go get a master's or a PhD based on the type of work they're wanting and needing to do. So that is a good place. And I think really beyond that is joining some groups. If you join some groups on LinkedIn and you get to see what people are talking about on nudges, behavioral science, whatever else, join some of those communities, see what those people are linking to, what they're talking about, and just allow yourself time to fall into the rabbit holes of research. If you haven't been listening to the Brainy Business Podcast, there's tons of stuff there. Inside BE is a great resource. Habit Weekly is a great resource, where Sam's going to be here in a couple weeks. So lots of things linking to lots of information to start just doing your own research on that. And if anyone does have questions about A&M or anything, of course, you can email me, melina@thebrainybusiness.com, for any of the stuff.
And a related question that's not here, but I wanted to ask you, do you think that you need an academic background or a degree to be a behavioral economics consultant?
No, I think that it helps, right? But it's not, I would say it's not required. And especially, and I don't think that will always be the case. But at this point, enough of a interest focus, showing that you care enough, and that if you've got the passion for it and you're putting in the work and you just don't have the degree, depending on what industry you're looking to work in and the impact you're looking to have, I do not think it is required everywhere. Again, in the same way that, people without marketing degrees end up working in marketing, right? But I think it's going to be harder and harder if you don't have that background, but there's time.
And actually, I don't. I am a mathematician. I have a master's in actuarial mathematics. You both mentioned your companies are small, that you kept them small on purpose. What is the size of your team, and what are the roles you have in your team?
Well, for the bulk of the world, this is the team of the Brainy Business, believe it or not. I have some things that are hired out from the podcast and different areas of support. And when I'm doing research projects or things for a team that need more work to them, I have partners that I'm able to do work with, the Human Behavior Lab at A&M being a big one of those. But in general, it's this guy. And a big reason for that is because when people are coming to the Brainy Business, they want me, right? They want to have work from me. There are things I can get some support on, but in general, they're looking for my brain. And because I have low overhead, I'm able to scale projects and things in a way that I can just dedicate to the number that I want to do. And I can say no to things that I don't. And I'm not trying to, make a $1 million a day or anything like that. So, yeah.
Melina, we're running out of time, but do you have a hard stop, or can you stay another?
Nope. I can answer. I can stay and answer some questions.
This would be great. And for you guys who do have a hard stop, don't worry, we'll send you the recording afterwards. So please, if you have to disconnect, absolutely, cook dinner or whatever, please go ahead and we'll send you the recording, and you'll be able to watch the rest whenever you have time. So for us, we are a core team of 6 people, and we have some external collaborators, so 3-4 people who help out in projects. How important has a mentorship or professional guidance been in your career as a BE consultant?
I would say it's like it is important, but I would say it's not even like the mentorship professional guidance as much as it's just being open and having good conversations with people, right? And being willing to provide support, so then when you have a question, people are willing to talk to you in the same way. I have had the tool of the podcast, as people want to be able to be on the show or whatever else, and then we can have additional conversation from there. And so while I haven't necessarily had anybody that I would say has been like a mentor, I feel like everyone I'm learning from all the time, and being able to say, ask good questions. The field is so full of people that are willing to be open and transparent and to share and provide feedback. And so I think on the one hand, it's incredibly valuable and a huge aspect. And there isn't anyone that I would say has been like my mentor that made this happen, sort of deal.
So you wouldn't spend a day per week with Kahneman in the beginning.
Hey, would I? For sure I would, but I didn't have that, so it hasn't yet made the difference. I'm a big fan of mentors and that sort of work, but I don't have that hasn't been a huge aspect in a part of my journey in what I would call a traditional mentor.
What are some important soft skills for an academic transitioning into consulting? That's a good one.
Yeah, I would say being a good communicator is really important, and understanding I think that you have a form of debate in academia that's a little bit different than what you see in the business world of things. And, you may have someone saying, well, that's wrong or something in academia in a way that would not go over very well in industry. And even while you have a little bit more leeway with that as you're a consultant, being able to properly frame thoughts and messages, and picking your battles, asking good questions, understanding the problem and what someone's working on, and not trying to force what you think is right, even if you know the right answer, helping them to be on board with whatever it is so it feels like it's their idea. There's a lot of like building out the win and letting them shine instead of talking about your own work. And that's not necessarily just a transition from academia into consulting, but I think just general good relations and helping other people to feel comfortable and wanting to endorse the work that you're doing. That sort of empathy is important.
If I also may share some of my experience, because we've tried working with a couple of professors and people from academia, and it was very difficult because the world of business and the world of academia are very different.
Mm-hmm.
Different things matter. And this is where I'm getting a little bit controversial, but I guess you might agree with me, at least silently. I think the fact that behavioral economics is to a large extent still very academic, it creates kind of an over focus on the science, and we've touched on this before. All the principles, behavioral economics, all the frameworks, they're just a tool that you should use to solve a problem. So in my opinion, the thing that someone from academia should be very careful about is to focus on the business problem, not on the research and the science behind it. Don't even talk about yourself as a behavioral scientist, because whenever someone from business hears the word science and scientist, many of them don't want to work with you. So yeah, for me, and it has been a big transition for me to actually stop thinking in terms of the, the science that I'm doing, but focusing on the problem. And that's my advice. Do that. Focus on the business and forget a little bit about the science. Should behavioral economists or consultants be concerned with AI's ability to develop interventions for marketing solutions?
I say not yet, definitely. And to me, AI is at a space that it's actually, you need to be able to ask the right questions and to even know what to ask, and then to be able to look at what it provided to see like, well, that's not quite right, or that's not what I meant, and here's this. Like, it's definitely not, at this point, nothing I've seen at least is replacing anything by any means. And that's where having the awareness of what questions to ask, how to ask them, how to implement what comes back, and leveraging it as a tool, I think is really an effective way. I know there was another question on there of, if there's value from AI within the space. And so I think this answers that as well. I think it's really, really helpful. And I was working with a client, just this past week, and we're doing some email campaigns and looking for lifts, and was having to find, based on the results we had on open to click rates on this first round, what, with the return of the percentage that we were having, at what point was it reaching statistical significance? Did we have enough people in the sample yet, or how many more were we needing to run? And so I had that set up in my chat GPT to be able to say, here's the difference between this is this, and then this comes to this, and if we get this, what's the sample size I need for statistical significance based on this run and this run, and was able to get that while we're on the call, to be able to say, hey, we need another 1,000 people to complete this round of emails before we'll know if this is statistically significant or not, versus having to say, oh, let me go and run it through the blah, 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 right? So a lot of value there, but you have to, again, know what to ask and what you're looking for to get that to be useful.
Would employers prefer a master's in behavioral science or a related master's, or a good amount of work experience in a BE related field like marketing, strategy, etc.?
Yeah, if you're coming, so I definitely don't know all the things on this, and what I would say is, from if you're coming from the outside in, especially, and the bigger they get, they're going to want degrees, right? If you are inside an organization working your way up, and you have that like internal political savvy, and you're able to be working in the marketing, and then you're wanting to layer in behavioral stuff. I know lots of people in large organizations who are their like head of behavioral science that don't have degrees in it, just because they had interest and were able to build that out, but they'd been working at that company for 5, 10, 15, 20 years to build that in. So, I mean, it's an investment either way. And I think it's just, as with all of it, as I've already said, the further you take before you fully jump in, the more likely it is that you're going to need a degree.
I totally agree with what you've just said. And there's also a career path in all kind of marketing agencies and so on, where they don't really care about degrees at all. I think you can get a head start there and then transition into a corporation.
Yeah.
Is there a reason why you chose to do strategic consultancy versus doing BE research consultancy? What are the challenges of each?
Yes. So for me, I am like the personality type, passion in the like, oh, this is the thing and you can do this. And like, I get excited about the ideas, and I'm not so like loving doing the stuff, right? To be fully candid, right? That's just like not where my joy is. And in a world of not wanting, at least at this phase of the company, to be building out a big team of people and things like that that are consistently doing that sort of work, that is just building on where my joy comes from. And for others, they really love to do that sort of work. So that's, again, finding what you care about. And I know there are people that want to do that. And so for me, it this allows for the budget to not be as high, because the clients I work with are only paying for me to be there at key points that make sense. And you're not paying my rates for me to be writing a report for you on something. I mean, it's just not good for anybody. And so being able to do that type of inspiring, thoughtful, conversational work where I'm asking questions and working directly with people, is something that I it's where I get the most joy, and I believe have found that I provide the most value over years of doing this. And there's plenty of that to be able to provide advice. So.
And I love this last sentence, because that goes back to the business problem. And you shouldn't be thinking once again about BE as the end goal, but you chose to the business problems to be the strategic problems. We, on the contrary, we chose digital sales, for instance, and we are focusing on digital sales, and we are using behavioral economics as a tool to advise clients in how to boost their digital sales. And you do the same in strategy. Melina, I think we have to wrap it up. Thank you so much for being here with us. I very much hope you'll join another of our webinars in the future. Thank you for all your thoughts. And if people want to reach out to you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so thank you for that. Anyone that wants to send me an email, please do. Melina@thebrainybusiness.com. You can find me as the Brainy Biz on pretty much all the socials, just Melina Palmer on LinkedIn. And I would say too, so because like you were saying, I get asked all these sorts of questions all the time, people reaching out wanting insight and advice. We have set up a Patreon that's very nominally priced, and I do a monthly Q&A option for people. So for anyone who's interested and wants to ask more questions and get insights regularly, finding the Brainy Business on Patreon is a good option for that as well. And I hope to connect with everybody.
So we'll share all that in the follow-up email. Melina, have a good morning, all of you guys in Europe. Have a good evening, and speak soon again. Thank you so much, and bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Not sure if you wanted me to hang out for a minute or just go.